How are you, man?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks for doing Summit. That was cool.
You bet.
That was fun. What was your experience like there?
That was my first experience. I didn't have any idea what to expect. My only regret is that I didn't go the first 2 days because I really enjoyed not just being on the panel, but hearing other panelists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was well done. Super well done.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd have gone over to the Salt Palace. I think you had new ventures there.
Yeah, we had Startup Alley. We had about 150 startups there.
My son was there.
Kind of showing off. Yeah, that's cool.
He didn't tell me till he was done. I'm like, why didn't you come over and see me, Dad? I'm like, where were you? With Startup Alley. Well, have you ever thought about communicating to your dad? Because it was across the street. I could have gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was there with a startup. He did some BYU startup.
What was his startup?
Called Ember, EMBER. And they do product and data management software. They won some
I might have met
award
him.
at it's actually UVU. I said BYU, but I meant UVU.
Yeah, I might have met him. I went around and talked to all of them.
Probably. I think they had a way to roast marshmallows at their booth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember those guys.
Yeah. One of those guys was my son.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Surprising me, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty entrepreneurial?
Surprisingly so. Yeah, I didn't see this coming.
He has it in his genes, man.
I know, but I got 8 kids with genes and they're all different.
Yeah.
They're all so different.
Yeah.
But
all my kids are way different too.
Yeah, this one struggled through school just because he was, twirl. And I thought I should have realized then that is an entrepreneurial behavior. He was just always distracted by something. And, I'm like, okay, well, that's what entrepreneurs are typically.
That's true. How long are we good, Weston? How long have you been doing Teton? When did you start it?
2005. This is our 20-year anniversary.
Congrats, man. Holy crap.
Thank you.
That's impressive.
Been quite a ride.
What was the original idea there in 2005?
Funny you ask. I'll give you some background. So I had been in the industry at a different company. They did a lot of things right, but I noticed they did a lot of things that I didn't think at the time were right. And so I carry on a notebook. You can see it over here. And I started taking, I always kept track of my to-dos. Mm-hmm. You can check them off. It feels good. Mm-hmm. But I started using the back of the book to write down my to-don'ts and kept a to-don't list. And it got extensive. I was surprised at how many things I put on my to-don't list. Things like we were just talking about, don't chase opportunities. The word no is a pretty powerful word when you're an entrepreneur.
Oh,
and the companies I'd worked for were in the habit of saying yes to opportunities. And so they became a master of nothing. They diversified too quickly before they mastered anything. Mm-hmm. And that was on my to-don't list if I ever were to get into business myself. And sure enough, it came back to haunt them. When they missed, they started out paying vendors late, but when they missed payroll, that was the kiss of death.
Yeah.
But what they had done for me is they'd helped me establish relationships with factories overseas and with customers here domestically. So I had some incredible relationships with these Chinese factories, Taiwanese owned factories in China in 2005. Retailers like Sportsman's Warehouse and Cabela's here domestically. And so when they went out of business or struggled, were almost out of business in 2005, it was really my factory and my customer here at Sportsman's Warehouse that said to me, Scott, I don't think this business is as hard as they mentioned the company name. And I said, yeah, I don't think so either. And both of them said, why don't you just do it? And I thought initially, me? Well, there's an easy answer because I've never run a business before. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. I'm a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
They both said virtually the same thing. We trust you can do it. It was their faith in me.
That's pretty powerful.
They had more confidence in me than I had in myself, honestly. And so I don't want to call it an intervention, but it was this close to an intervention because I had to figure out what I was going to do next. Yeah. The company had missed payroll. And so 2005, I jumped in with both feet with one hand holding hands with my retailer, holding hands with my factory. And it was great. I learned through that experience the power of a triad. So I teach this to my people at Teton now. we're so used to having dyadic relationships. This conversation we're having right now is a dyad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would bring my factory to the same table as my customer. We'd all meet together. Competitors would probably think, man, you're inviting them to go around you. But I knew their character. And I knew that the best way to make this thing work was to just get rid of all the, I'm not going to protect my business by not having my factory know who my customer is, not having my customer know who my factory is. It just seemed so foreign to me.
Right.
I could make much, much further progress if I formed a triad and got them together. Not to mention, I had some other things on my to-don't list that required me to have them work together. For example, don't have a factory because you suck at managing inventory was on my to-don't list.
Yeah.
Well, how could I do that if I have a product-based business? Well, I did it by filling containers at the factory and shipping them directly to the customer. And I could only do that if they were communicating. So for the first 3 years, I had no domestic inventory. It was all direct import business.
Interesting.
Until almost 2008.
Wow.
Yeah. Another thing I like to don't list, don't have employees because you suck at managing. So yeah, I ran this whole thing by myself for
3 years?
Almost 3 years. Yeah.
How did, was it Teton then?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name? Like obviously Grand Tetons, love that, or how'd you come up with it?
Love the Grand Tetons, yes.
Yeah.
The URL was available. That was important.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
I have an IT guy, close friend of mine. We've been friends since high school. Really, really savvy IT guy. And when I was jumping in, I will say that from the very beginning, I leaned on him as well from an IT perspective. I was remote before remote was a thing, right? So I started the company in my garage, had a home office. And so in 2005, I was remote, and I needed a really good IT guy to make that seamless. So he helped determine, help come up with the name. We just brainstormed together and came up with the name. He found that the URL Teton Sports and Teton Gear were available. So yeah, Teton became the name.
Well, it's like iconic now.
It's really been great.
Cool. Yeah. I
like to say this, that it was so nice of whoever the map creators were to name their mountains after my business. It's really, really sweet of them.
And so for the first 3 years, you don't even have a US warehouse. Mm-hmm. You're shipping directly to customers. That's hard back then, isn't it? Like, how did you find a manufacturer or warehouse overseas that could do that? Isn't that hard?
Well, it would be impossible if it was a true startup. But again, my relationships weren't startup. Even though Teton was a startup in 2005, my relationships went back into the late 90s with both customers and retailers. So it's just a function of them having faith in me. Cabela's and Sportsman's Warehouse. I guess Cabela's more so than Sportsman's Warehouse was already doing full container loads. They had their own branded product. So I had a patented item that we had designed and patented with the help of the factory. In fact, the factory initially had the patent over something we had designed together, and then they sold me the patent. So now it's my patent. But that's an example of something I did with Cabela's under their brand. You would have no idea that I was making it because it said Cabela's on the cot. But we sold, I want to say 30 to 40 containers a year of just one SKU. So I had one SKU, 34 containers a year.
That's
that
incredible.
It was remarkable. Yeah. And then I introduced the direct import program to Sportsman's Warehouse. They hadn't discovered that business model yet. It's a really good business model. The fewer touches you have on big and bulky product, the better. So I just helped them kind of pioneer their direct import program through my business, and worked great.
So what happens in 2008 where you need to start hiring and all of that?
Yeah. So
2008 was an interesting year too.
It was an interesting year. It really started in 2007, 2006. What would happen is, as good of forecasters as Sportsman's Warehouse were, they weren't perfect. Mm-hmm. And so if it takes 5 months to get product from the time you place a purchase order with a factory, for them to get the raw material and cut and sew it and produce it and box it and ship it over, like 4 or 5 month lead time. So Sportsman's Warehouse sold their product faster than they had forecasted. They'd be out of product. And Dale Smith, the sweetest guy on the earth, was the president of Sportsman's Warehouse, but he loved buying. So he remained the camping buyer. So that's who I'd deal with the president of the company. Meet with him once a month. And he would say, Scott, I can't sell from empty shelves. I got to have something on the shelf. So when I run out of your product, I got to put your competitor on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course he does.
Yeah.
So it became, I'm slow,
Mm-hmm.
but I finally get there. Became apparent to me that I needed to carry some domestic inventory. The consumer doesn't know if the product was on the shelf was bought DI or domestic. They don't know the difference. I needed to make it seamless for Sportsman's Warehouse to carry my product. So I still wanted to encourage the DI direct import business, but I needed to have a backup with domestic inventory when they didn't forecast properly.
Mm.
And so I just fill in with domestic inventory as needed. Well, that requires a warehouse. So I found a 3PL that could do the warehousing. The problem.
What's a 3PL?
A third-party logistics warehouse.
Okay.
P&L stands for party logistics. So,
Okay.
so it's if you don't want to have your own warehouse and you want somebody else to do it for you, you just pay them a fee, and they're all over the country. So I've had a friend that had a warehouse, and I just had a 3PL relationship with him. I said, "Hey, can I bring in containers and store it there, and then you ship it as I send you orders, you ship it out." Great on paper, not so great in practice because his idea of customer service wasn't my idea of customer service. Right. I wanted the customer service that we performed our customer service the same way we build our product,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good and dependable. And so then I asked him after a few months of that, and if I had to give it a grade, it'd probably be a B-,
Mm-hmm.
C+, B-. It worked, but it was passing, but it wasn't great. And I wanted to be A+. So I went to this warehouse and said, is it possible I can just put my own employee in? So I could train the employee to the level of customer service that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
it to be at. Meaning I want to ship quick, and I want to communicate that I've shipped quick, and I want to provide tracking numbers. Basic stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
something you just got to do. So I put an employee in there. By then I had read enough books. I'm a voracious reader, read enough books to learn how to manage better, including learning how to manage inventory.
Oh, that's good.
So
yeah.
I put this employee in there in this 3PL. Excuse me. He ended up doing our level of customer service. We then became available to people who weren't big enough to order DI. They could order domestically. So Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
for example, Amazon up to then had been known as a book,
Mm-hmm.
CD book store.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to become the everything store, but people were like, "What? You're going to sell camping gear on a book site? And what? Why?" But I don't know if I called them or they called me. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but it was fairly early in Amazon making this transition. And it just so happened that I had domestic inventory. So it was easy for me to say, yes, you got to pull from my domestic inventory. I'm going to incentivize you to transition to DI as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we landed at Amazon. Remember, I've got this friend that's a IT genius. Amazon was a pain in the neck to deal with.
Really?
Yeah, they represented maybe 10% of my business and 90% of my headache.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah, you hear about the Pareto principle, the 80-20.
Yeah.
This was like 90-10.
Yeah.
Amazon was just a pain. I had my office downstairs. I'd come upstairs and, my wife's there and I inevitably have somebody to complain to as my wife. So I'd complain about Amazon. Like, oh, there's so much work for such a little bit. Their POs come through and they're just, they're a few $1,000s. They're not tens of thousands of dollars. They're a few $1,000s,
Mm-hmm.
or in some cases, a few $100s. And they want me to ship to 16 different locations because they have fulfillment centers across the nation. They're just such a pain. She'd be like, well, dump them. We don't need them. So I'd call my friend up. Sam, I'm thinking about Amazon's such a pain. I'm thinking about dumping them. He says, yeah, they might be going places. I probably wouldn't do it yet. They stick with them for a little while. Fast forward 2 or 3 more months, same conversation. I'd complain to my wife about something else that had happened at Amazon. Just dump them. We don't need them. Sam would say, yeah, they're making progress. I think they're going to go places. This is all back in the 2008 time frame.
Right.
Fast forward to today. Thank goodness for Sam, right? Telling me that they're going places because they're by far our largest account now. It's not even close. And we do full container loads. We ship full container loads from where it's made directly into their cross-dock facility. And then from there, they distribute to their, at this point, it's, probably 80 different fulfillment centers.
Their logistics are insane, are they not? Like
Incredible.
How they figured it out?
Yeah.
And they're probably awesome to work with now that they figured it out.
Not so much.
Really? Interesting.
They're kind of the bully, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they can be. For example, if you try to do a price increase, and we've had to do price increases, this is just life.
Sure.
Things happen. You get tariffs that are surprising.
Mm-hmm.
You get all of a sudden container rates go through the roof like they did a few years ago. When you have big and bulky product and you have containers go from 4,000 a container to 20,000 a container, you've got to raise your prices.
Yeah.
So I'd go to, Sportsman's Warehouse and Cabela's, raise prices. They'd be like, we get it. We got to raise retail too. So we got to hold our margins. And the consumer just has to pay a higher price. That's called inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Not for Amazon. Amazon says, yeah, no, we're not going to set that price increase. And our
how can they
response
decide that?
Yeah, exactly. How can you decide that? Don't we get to decide? Yeah, not if you're going to do business with us. We get to decide. So why don't you do this? Why don't you we'll raise retail. See if the consumer will buy it at the higher retail price. And then if after 3 months we see that it's happening, then you can raise wholesale. So you can imagine during that 3-month period, they're making bank on margin.
Yeah,
right? They made all the margin.
That actually sounds insane.
It's insane. But their excuse was, if after 3 months, we can't hold those retail prices, we got to drop them back down again. And if we drop them back down again, we got to have our margin. So we're not going to let you raise your prices for 3 months. Okay, fine. We thought, okay, we've got domestic inventory that was brought in long before the $20,000 container increase. So we'll just do this for 3 months. Well, within that 3-month period, the vendor manager changed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the buyer, in effect, but they call them vendor managers, changed. We get to the end of the 3 months. We're like, okay, we're ready to establish this price increase because sales are still good. Yeah, no. And, that's how Amazon is a bully.
Did they ever let you do it? Like, what do you do at that point? That's crazy.
Okay.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. I'm going to give you a little bit more context. So I had moved to Puerto Rico in 2018.
Tax? Just trying to get away from tax. Really?
Yeah.
No joke?
No
That's
joke.
cool.
So, I was going to ask if you knew what the Puerto Rico play was. So Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. Just has some really, really great tax benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They incentivize entrepreneurs to reestablish themselves in Puerto Rico. So I did, 2018, took the whole family down.
Don't you have to stay there for a certain amount of years or something?
You have to be there 183 days a year. So that's 6 months plus 1 day.
Okay.
And yeah, there's a commitment. I ended up doing 5 years. The commitment's, I think, 3.
Let's go. Beautiful, right?
It was quite
cool
the experience. Place. Yeah. There's a lot of positives to Puerto Rico. There's some negatives too, especially after having lived in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we know how good we have it here. We have it so good in Utah from a regulatory standpoint, just from a culture standpoint. The culture in Utah, just the individuals in Utah, we're not victims. We see a problem, and that's an opportunity to us. And a lot of places, including Puerto Rico, if there's a problem, it's because somebody else caused it. And I'm a victim, and so therefore somebody else has got to fix it. That's really frustrating to entrepreneurs, right? So it's got its downsides too. But
how is it governed? I don't even know.
Got a governor.
So it's got, and they're basically a state, but they're not a state.
They're a territory.
They're a territory.
Yeah. Which means, because they're not a state, they don't have representation in Washington, D.C. I mean, they recognize the president of the United States, of course, but they don't get a vote for him or her. They get a vote in the primary, but I mean, it's meaningless. But they don't get a vote in the general election. They don't have a senator. They don't have a congressperson in place. So
can they stop being a territory? Or they're kind of just like at our whims, right? at the whims of the United States.
Like a stepchild, right?
Yeah.
Can they get officially adopted? They could. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, it's political because it seems like if you add, they'd probably be a
two
blue
more
state.
senators, and they'd be blue.
So you got to do the same thing somewhere else,
Right?
To get a red one,
Right.
and I don't think that exists.
And maybe it can be Greenland.
Yeah, maybe it can be Greenland now.
Right. Anyway, so Puerto Rico, it was a good experience. I hired somebody else to be the CEO in that time period that I was there. And this situation with Amazon happened during that CEO's tenure, right? So she was with me for 4 years. First 3 years did a really, really good job developing the organization. She was just masterful. In that fourth year, we had this experience with Amazon where we go back to them after 3 months, after them telling us, do this and we'll raise your prices, and then changing the vendor manager out. Anyway, she was so upset, and with reason.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Rightfully so. I backed her on this one. At the same time, she had found a local company. Their name's Pattern. I actually think very highly of Pattern. Do you know who Pattern
I love
is?
Pattern. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Dave,
right?
The team there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They do good work. But they cut their teeth on small, compact items like like nutraceuticals, right? Teton is big and bulky. It was new to them. At the same time that Heather was introduced to Pattern, you had these supply chain issues, and the tail end of the supply chain issue was that everybody ended up buying too much product, including Amazon. And so Amazon's fulfillment centers were now bursting at the seams. They had no place for more product. So they told their 3PL sellers, sorry, I'm mixing terms here. They told their 3P sellers. So we sell to Amazon 1P, which means they're the customer. We sell to them. They now own the product, and then they price it at retail.
Mm-hmm.
Pattern is a 3P seller, which means Amazon never owns the product. It's consignment. It's using fulfillment centers that are owned by Amazon, and it's using Amazon.com's website.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really a consignment deal. Amazon, because they were bursting at the seams, went back to all of their 3P sellers and told them, "Hey, we're reducing the free days from 180 days to 90. Then we're going to start charging you. And by the way, we're doubling what we charge you." So they really laid it hard on 3P sellers. Well, contractually with Pattern, that all those fees came back to the vendor, came back to us. So we started doing business with Amazon through Pattern. And the more business we did, the more money we lost.
Yeah.
Because it was big and bulky
gosh.
and so costly.
That's so crazy.
It made no sense. But that was the knee-jerk reaction that we had to Amazon being a bully. And I supported the move. But it didn't work. So it was one of the things that got me back from Puerto Rico is this failed experiment. Transitioning from a 1P relationship with Amazon to a 3P relationship with Amazon through Pattern. So I came back from Puerto Rico, took over the reins again, started running the company. The first thing I did is transition us back to a 3P relationship, to a 1P relationship with Amazon, because the 3P relationship wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really blame Pattern for it not working. I blame Amazon for it not working.
Yeah.
I think very, very highly of the people at Pattern, and I think they do a really good job for the proper fit. I don't. Well,
they can get bullied too, right? It sounds like they got bullied by Amazon as much as anybody.
And big and bulky, I think, is a different beast than small and compact. And we're definitely big and bulky. So I transitioned the business back to 1P. Well, by then, we had gone almost a year without doing business with Amazon in a 1P relationship. Changed the power dynamic, right? They wanted us back. That vendor manager had lost, an 8-figure business. Well, why'd you leave us? He says. Let me make the list, right? And so we made the list, and he gave in on everyone. The power dynamic had so changed. They were no longer the bully. And we said, we will do business with you 1P under these conditions. Again, at the same time that we were transitioning away from Pattern. So it worked out really well. We're back with Amazon. Things are priced properly. Making money back in the black, the way it should be.
At what point did you go direct to consumer, meaning just selling it directly from your website?
That happened with Heather too. Again, good leadership. We didn't have a D2C play, in part because I kind of had this philosophy, and it was an erroneous philosophy, but hear me out because it's going to sound pretty good.
Sure.
That if I sold D2C on my website, I'd be a competitor to my retail partners. And my retail partners were Sportsman's Warehouse and Cabela's and Amazon. I didn't want to compete with them. Right. I wanted to support them. That was my philosophy. Fast forward to today, you have to have a direct-to-consumer approach, because no one retailer is going to carry your whole catalog. The only play that carries your whole catalog, I guess Amazon could if you allowed them to, yeah. But the only play that really carries your whole catalog is your direct-to-consumer website. So that happened with the previous CEO.
And can that all be run on Shopify, or do you have to build your own thing? Or
we do it on Shopify. Yeah.
Isn't it incredible, these companies that have, but then they're so big and they have so much power, it gets wild. The Amazon store is wild. Shopify seems less like that, but
well, Shopify's pretty wild too. I got told this. I didn't believe it at first, and now I totally do. That the biggest competitor to Amazon is Shopify. And I got told this, I don't know, I want to say 10 years ago, but it might have only been 7 or 8, but it was a long time ago. And I thought, how in the world is Shopify going to be a competitor to Amazon? I was thinking business model to business model. Mm-hmm. Well, no, it's what Shopify does is allow all the brands to have easy and direct access to consumers outside of Amazon, right? So you have all these Shopify websites that are popping up in direct competition to Amazon. I totally get it now. They're the biggest competitor to Amazon.
Yeah. But they don't have any logistics or anything, right? Like they don't have like what Amazon, you're just doing it all. You're just selling it from there and you're figuring out your own logistics and shipping and things like that.
I think Shopify is starting to get those things.
Really?
We don't participate yet, but I can totally envision if Shopify had fulfillment centers that dotted, North America, like Amazon does, then they would really be a competitor, because we could put product. Again, if we were good product managers, we could put product in all those, or good inventory managers. We could put product in all those fulfillment centers one day away from 85% of the population. So I think it might go there. We're not there now. Probably the biggest struggle I have with D2C is how much it costs to ship. Again, big and bulky. We're shipping from Salt Lake to Virginia or to New York or Florida. It's very costly.
And you usually pass those off to your customers, so it kind of makes the price go up, right?
No, the customer won't buy from you if you do that.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So we give over a certain dollar amount is free shipping. And so most of our business qualifies for free shipping.
Oh, I see.
You have to do that to compete with Amazon.
Yeah, that makes sense. Crazy. Yeah, you're in a really interesting business. All the various things you have to think about.
Yeah.
Because we haven't even talked about branding or marketing or anything like that. We're still on just logistics, which is crazy. And it's like a huge piece of it.
Yeah.
I also think Shopify is their competitor to Amazon, and they're a competitor to Stripe too. Their Shop Pay thing. And obviously they take Stripe too. And so but there's going to be some tension there between those two companies, because where Shopify can make a lot of money, which I assume is how Amazon makes a lot of money, is they're taking the payment stuff.
On the merchant side, yeah.
Yeah. The merchant side is a big deal.
Yeah.
Which seems like a win for whoever can own the merchant side.
As long as we're still on the subject of logistics, now you got to add on the tariffs that are, from one day to the next.
Yeah. What do you think of these?
Without much warning.
What do you think of, obviously we have a new president. His whole thing is he's openly said he would like to eliminate income tax altogether and make all money off of tariffs, which is it's an interesting, Milton Friedman hated it. He's the conservative economist. He would be rolling over in his grave. He was
he was a free trader, Milton Friedman?
Yeah, very, very much really? So. Yeah, he would have hated this.
Interesting.
Or maybe he'd love it now for other reasons. I don't know, given the state of things.
Yeah.
But he was definitely a free trader all the way through.
It's interesting. We We have an ABC initiative at Teton. ABC stands for Anywhere But China. And we're trying so hard and have been trying for so many years and succeeded in some ways, but we're still 70% China and 30% outside of China. And then the 30% that's outside of China, guess where they get most of the raw material from?
China.
Their buckles, their zippers, their fabrics, their fill, China. It's like this country has a stranglehold. So I'm kind of schizophrenic because personally, I want to decouple from China. But if you look at my business, I'm still totally coupled with China. So, I'm supportive of fair trade. And I agree with our new president. It hasn't been fair.
Oh yeah.
And making it more fair, if it hurts my business to help the country, I would prefer that than to put my business ahead of what's best for the country. Now, others could argue it's not best for the country. Okay, we can have that argument. But if I'm having the argument with myself, which I frequently do because of my multiple personalities.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I'm saying things like, okay, I want fair trade. China certainly hasn't been fair over the years.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue with my ABC initiative, hardcore. I'm going there in a couple months. Just again, I want to, somewhere else in Asia, we're not going to bring cut and sew anytime soon back to the US.
Yeah.
It's just too labor intensive.
Vietnam?
We went to Vietnam. Vietnam's gotten too expensive. But
really?
Philippines is a really good place. What I want is our Taiwanese factories that moved to China. They used to manufacture in Taiwan. Then they moved to China in the early 2000s. I want to move with them again outside of China. And so as they move, I move with them. If they refuse to move, which some do, then I'm forced to find a different supplier. But we have a really good factory in the Philippines that makes all of our bags, backpacks, hydration. We have a new product line coming out, adventure travel line. They are fantastic. They're Taiwanese. They're Taiwanese owned in the Philippines. Same thing with what we do in Myanmar. We do blankets in Myanmar and hopefully soon sleeping bags in Myanmar. Taiwanese owned in Myanmar.
What are you going to do when China takes Taiwan?
They're not. I'm going to fight. That's what I'm going to do. No, that better not happen.
Oh, that's happening, my friend.
You think it's going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay, so they did it with Hong Kong. It was established. They didn't do anything wrong, right? It was just established by Great Britain in 97. They'd hand it back over.
Right.
Hong Kong's different than China, even though it's been nearly different. 30 years.
Yeah.
So I guess if they treat Taiwan like Hong Kong, it might work. But if they treat Taiwan like they do the rest of the China, that's not going to work at all.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, what do I know? I just say that. But if I were a betting man, I would bet it happens more than it doesn't happen. Oh, and the question is, like, do we as a country, the United States, stop that?
Do something about it.
And if we do, man, that's a commitment.
Yeah.
Now we've started, the war of all wars.
Yeah.
If we don't, wow, that is a concession.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a really interesting political, like, what do you do either way?
I think in a little old me, what do I know? But I think the best way to do it is to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
Whatever that takes, peace through strength, whatever the deal is.
Because they're making all our chips too.
Taiwan is.
Yeah.
Taiwan's making the advanced chips. Yeah. China's making the lesser.
Yeah. Taiwan's making the chips. That's why we're trying to get all of that out of there too. It really is interesting. So it's hard to get out of China. And you've been trying this for a while, but you're still 70% China. And you've got Philippines, you've got Vietnam, which is too expensive, Myanmar. Where do you go?
More in the Philippines, more in Myanmar. I'm going to Cambodia as well.
Okay. So
it's Southeast Asia. It's got to stay in Asia. Now, I did a trade delegation, 2 trade delegations to Mexico with governor-led trade delegations, thinking that's why I started my mission. I speak fluent Spanish. I just thought, oh, how awesome would it be to manufacture in Mexico? It's my second home. And I speak the language and it's the same time zone. And, I get down there and they're just not ready. They said, yeah, we can do it. but you supply us with all the raw material. Well, that's not, I'm used to buying turnkey for a factory who then goes down the street to the relationship and gets the zippers and goes around the corner and gets the buckles because the supply chain is so established and so mature.
Mm-hmm.
In Mexico, the supply chain, it doesn't exist. So they want me to be the supply chain. Well, it's just not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So again, I need a factory to establish themselves in Mexico if I want to produce in Mexico. And then I will subcontract out to that factory. But I can't be the one establishing the factory. That's not what I do.
And it's too costly to do that in America.
Impossible.
Like impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think this is where I think there might be a little bit of weakness in the tariff argument? But what do I know? Like, and maybe we need to go through this short-term pain and then China becomes a great trading partner. We don't have to worry about this anymore, which is probably his calculus, right?
Yeah. Maybe they stop cheating.
Yeah. Maybe he creates some fairness and we don't have to worry about this anymore. But one of the current challenges of that is you can't really do it in America. So this whole idea of like, well, you want 0% tariffs, just build your factory in America. It's like,
chips,
easy.
Great idea. Car makers, great idea. But cut and sew, this is the last thing that'll move back to the States. And we don't want it back in the States. It's not clean manufacturing, right? The dyes and it's just not the kind of, it's not the kind of manufacturing we want to return anytime soon.
Right.
I'll never say never, but that was the first to outsource and it'll be the last to insource.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Did I make that word up? Insource?
No, I think that sounds right.
Outsource.
I think that's right.
Okay.
If there's an outsource, there's got to be an insource.
You'd think, right?
What are we talking? So how do you go about maintaining quality control given that your factories are so far away?
Good question. Pretty easy answer. Number one, we don't factory hop. Remember how I told you that I had a to-don't list?
Mm-hmm.
Don't factory hop. Factory hop is what so many people do to get a better price. And they'll manufacture their sleeping bag at this factory. And then if this factory offers a better price, they'll go to that factory. Not us. Once we get a factory fully trained and we train them on our standards, then we stick to it because the procedure is the same over and over and over again. When we talk about stitching, we talk about the number of stitches per linear inch. 7 stitches per linear inch. We get down to that level of detail. What buckle to use. After testing, we know which subcontract buckle to use. Because if you're shopping around for a better price, they'll use a cheaper buckle supplier. And guess what fails? The buckle or the zipper. So the way to establish quality control is to do it on the input side. Now, we keep them honest by doing it on the output side as well. So first of all, I always visit a factory to see what their process is. And one thing I learned early on is if they're wearing uniforms, for example, you might have those who cut and sew in yellow vests. And every once in a while, you'll see a blue vest. Well, the blue vests are your QC people, your quality control people. And they're just making sure that everything is done to a specific standard. And then that batch number, that line gets stamped on the law tag. So if I have an issue, I can go to the very date it was manufactured, even the line within the factory who made it, and we can determine who needs more training. Right? So
that's pretty cool.
Pretty good detail.
Yeah, they figured that out.
Yeah,
that's very cool. How often are you overseas? How much of your time do you spend?
Not so much anymore. I used to go a lot. Now I go probably once a year.
Okay.
I have other businesses, and so I do this round the world trip, and I try to Asia for Teton, Middle East for Mina Group. Going to Ukraine for another venture capital business I'm involved in. So I just do this RTW ticket.
Tell us what Mina Group is.
Mina stands for Middle East, North Africa. And there's the including all the GCC countries. Have a lot of money, but surprisingly little selection. And so when I first met Abdurrahman, this guy from Abdurrahman Al-Nasri is his last name, and from Saudi Arabia, I met him because he wanted to be our distributor for Teton camping gear in Saudi Arabia. This will get you. So I said to him, well, camping in Saudi Arabia, is that really a thing? It's so funny. He put his hand on my shoulder. Oh, we have got a lot to learn, don't we, young man? You do know that before we discovered oil, all we did was camp. We were nomads. So we can't wait to get back to our roots. We work in the city and we can't wait to get out on the weekend. So they do a tremendous amount of camping, believe it or not, in Saudi Arabia.
Interesting.
So that established his relationship with him. And he invited me over and he said, you can't believe the amount of change happening in Saudi Arabia. From women being able to drive, to families being able to eat together at restaurants, to, I mean, you name it. This is just this march toward Western values. But what they don't have is selection. And so in 2020, we decided to do something about that and help U.S. brands enter those markets.
Oh, that's cool.
Because you think about expansion for U.S. brands, Middle East is like, it takes two hands to get there.
Yeah.
Canada, Latin America, Europe, Asia, Australia. You might eventually 6 or 7 get to the Middle East. Well, we want to make it simple for them to get there. We have boots on the ground. We have offices in Riyadh and Dubai, warehouses in both places. We have brands like Camelback, and we're their master distributor. So
that's cool.
You might look at Camelback as a competitor to Teton because we both do hydration packs, but at the same time, they're also one of my vendors, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
In this other business.
That's really interesting. Going back to Teton real quick, like how do you decide when to launch a new product? What goes into that?
Well, first of all, I hire people way smarter than myself to help figure these things out. And in fact, I knew this, but it really took the previous CEO to really ingrain this. She's a master organizational developer. And so she brought on an executive team that even after she left is still a stellar team. And it's a team that one of them existed, was an employee before I left for Saudi Arabia, but Heather developed her into a really good finance person. So anyway, I have teams that help determine what's needed in the market. It's up to a 2-year process, right? Which makes it hard to react quickly. I've kind of pushed on that a little bit, so we're starting to act quicker. Because when you see a need, it may not exist 2 years from now.
Like fanny packs, that immediately comes to mind. Like fanny packs became like this really big thing for outdoors. Like 2 years ago? Like I don't know if that's still going to be a thing 5 years from now.
Certain things can take 2 years, but other things you got to react quicker.
Yeah.
So we've been able to change that a little bit of late and be quicker, but we just see a market need. We go through several iterations of initial design, then to the factory, we get initial samples, we critique the samples. Another round 2 of samples, we critique that, use it, send it out to ambassadors and different people, get their feedback, and so that's why you can see it takes so long. Because we want to come to market, we want it to be fully tested before it goes to market. Yeah. We're launching a new line called an adventure travel line here in the spring.
Oh, cool!
That was started 2 years ago. It's gonna be a fun line. It's been really well received at trade shows and by our retailers.
How do you market? You mentioned like ambassadors. Do you try to find like influencers? I mean, you're well established now, so this is a little bit different. But for those who are, trying to start something like this or a consumer product company. How do you go about marketing?
I think the most important thing you can do is have your product do the marketing for you. So, I don't know a whole lot about marketing, or I didn't, right? And so I would say, okay, well, I don't know this mantra of, I know I'm wasting 50% of my marketing dollars. I just don't know which 50% it is, right? Well, dial that back a little bit and overbuild your product and make sure everybody who uses your product is delighted by it. I mean, they truly are, their experience is exceeded, their expectations are exceeded with their experience. They will give you 5-star reviews. They will market for you. They will talk about your product. There's nothing better than third-party validation. And so first and foremost, I would always make sure your product does your marketing for you. by making sure it's everything you say it is and more. That's why if you go on Amazon, you'll see tens of thousands of reviews for Teton, because we were so early, first of all.
Yeah, that was.
And the number of stars we have are it's just so fun to see.
Who do you look at? I mean, I don't want to name competitors or whatever, but who do you look at as like a North Star, or do you even think, maybe a better question is like, do you even think about your competitors?
Let me answer it this way. So I read a book, which wouldn't be surprised if you read it as well. Start with Why.
Yeah.
By Simon Sinek. The golden circle, right? So the bullseye is why, the middle ring is how, and the outer ring is what. And I think so often in life, you meet somebody and you say, oh, well, what do you do? And this discussion happens in this outer ring.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was stuck in that outer ring, I would tell you who my competitors are, right? They're the other ones who do sleeping bags and backpacks and tents and cots, right? And I can name several of them. But once you get in one ring to the how ring, that's really how Teton started. I told you the story about how I had my don't have a warehouse, don't have employees. I'll guarantee you that wasn't on any of the other people's radar that are competitors in the what ring.
Right.
Right. So I was unique in the
point.
how ring. I didn't really have competitors. And I didn't look at the people in the what ring as competitors because they were doing business so different than me.
Mm-hmm.
So then I read Simon Sinek's book and I see that there's something even better than the how ring, and that's the why. That's when I really started getting into discovering what my core values are, because my core values are the company's core values, which is typical. Founder values are his company's or her company's values. And so that was really more of a discovery than anything. I always knew that based on childhood experiences, some of them poor experiences, that I wanted to make sure that whatever we built was comfortable and that you could depend on it. And that it was easy, easy to set up, easy to take down, easy on your wallet. You know, all of those things are affected by the business model. If I can bring something to market more efficiently than my competitors can in the what ring because of how I'm doing business, then I can overbuild the product. Then I can delight. I can exceed the expectation. Then I can get third-party validation. So really, to me, it was all about how, and then later on with discovering the core values, the three uniques that make us tick, comfortable, dependable, and easy.
Yeah.
So that's a long answer to your question.
No, that's genius. Actually, that's really cool. How do you think about Utah as a consumer product place now? We used to be known as like SaaS. Well, prior to that, we were known as like MLMs, and then we still do have some of those. But we're really good at tech, particularly software as a service, fintech, those types of companies. But man, the consumer product industry or the retail industry, I don't know what to call it. Is it consumer product or retail? I don't know what to call it.
Probably both.
Yeah. Okay. That industry feels to me like it's exploding, which is why we did a retail track at Silicon Slopes Summit. It's like, wow, look at this. And the amount of people who are doing incredible things in this state is just mind blowing. Right. And there are some that are like you and Jeremy with Traeger and those types of people who are more well known. But I don't think people, Cozy Earth, there's some incredible product companies that I don't even know that people are paying attention to.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's in the water, it's in the DNA, it's in the culture. I don't know what it is. It's an incredible place to live. And it's hard to explain it to people who don't live it, who don't experience it. Yeah, you're right. And I'm in the industry and I still get introduced to it. I was so impressed with what happened at Silicon Slopes, the retail sector of it. I think I told you that my only regret was not going the previous 2 days.
Right.
Yeah, just I don't know. It's an amazing place to live. I'm so supportive of these other companies. I remember the early days of Climate. Climate? They've now been bought by, I think, a company called Gather. But in the early days of Climate, we were so friendly with them. They'd come over to the Teton offices. I had an office in Salt Lake. A showroom wasn't really, upstairs was an office space, but it was really meant to be a showroom. The idea being that we weren't exhibitors at the outdoor retailer trade show, but when buyers were in town for that show, we would try to get them to come to our showroom. And so they're already in town, come to our showroom. And so we could have this showroom experience one-on-one with these buyers. So I had the showroom, and Corey Toll with Climate would come visit us on a regular basis, and we'd talk and share ideas, and it's fun. It's just cool. These people are cool.
We're good at community here for some reason. I think we probably have a sense for the reason, but we're really, really good at that. You said something interesting right there where you don't go to the outdoor retail.
So it was on my to-don't list.
Okay, so I want to dig in on this. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think events and trade shows are worthwhile?
Let me answer it this way. They're worthwhile if you know what you're doing. And I didn't know what I was doing. Nor does it fit my personality. I'm not a dog and pony show kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right? But some people are. And so if you have the right people, doing a trade show makes a whole lot of sense. If you don't have the right people, doing a trade show doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I didn't have the right people. So when I first started, it was on my to-don't list. Since then, because I now have the right people, we do trade shows. But Outdoor Retailer was the show that for 10 years, it was in our backyard before it moved to Denver. Yeah. And I never exhibited. I'd walk the show.
It's back now, right?
But I'd never exhibit.
Has it come back?
Went to Denver for 5 years.
Yeah, I remember. It was like this big
lost a ton of traction. Yeah, Governor
Everybody
Herbert.
thinks Denver, like Salt Lake City is what everybody thinks Denver is. Denver is not what Salt Lake City is. No. It's not up against the mountains. No. It's not, I'm not a huge
It was
fan.
A cluster. It was a mess. Governor Herbert was involved in that. He's actually a partner in Mina Group.
Oh, cool.
So I got the inside story from Governor Herbert on what happened with that whole thing. It was a mess. It was really Patagonia being a bully.
I was going to say, it seemed like it was a Patagonia and really it was more of like a political activist type of a deal, which I'm not entirely sure. Something around our bear's ears, maybe, or something.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It was during the time frame when, it is funny. Yeah, you have to laugh or cry, one of the two. So let's just laugh about it. It was, bear's ears was pretty expansive. And the governor was trying to reduce the size of bear's ears because it was encroaching on things that it shouldn't have encroached on. At the same time, who says the state can't do a good job of protecting its land as well as probably better than the federal government can? There's a lot of state parks.
Yeah.
Snow Canyon being one of them. The federal government has nothing to do with that. And the state does a really good job at conservation and upkeep. So that was what this was about. And Patagonia simply wanted the federal government to maintain bear's ears in its full expanded form and threatened the OR show. Basically said, if we can't keep bear's ears the size we want it, then we're not going to exhibit anymore if it stays in Salt Lake. You have to move to Denver.
They're just such a huge vendor and client and brand.
But guess who never exhibited a single time in Denver?
Patagonia?
Patagonia.
Did Denver do something too? Patagonia is kind of a very, I like Patagonia, whatever.
Great stuff.
But it's very, very activist-y.
Exactly. Get off your perch.
Yeah. When the tech people and in particular VCs, there was a period where they would wear those Patagonia vests. And Patagonia came out with we do not support the tech industry. It was crazy. I was like, all I see is tech people wearing Patagonia vests. And they're like, we hate the tech community.
It's just weird. Anyway, I don't know why they didn't exhibit at Denver. My guess is because nobody else did either. It was a dying show. And it's unfortunate. It lost so much traction. It had a 5-year contract to be in Denver. It failed in Denver. Came back to Salt Lake hoping to regain its traction. It just hasn't.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So we've exhibited the last 2 years there. I don't know that we will again, but we have done well the last 2 years because we're now a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
The pond is really small.
Events are very cyclical too. Who knows if something else will come up and replace it or something like that.
Well, and that's part of the deal. Something has.
Oh, there has.
The SHOT Show in Vegas is taking a lot of a
It's
lot
hard
of
to
traction.
beat Vegas too, particularly for a trade show.
You got good beignets in Vegas. I can tell you where.
Where?
So you know Palazzo, right across from the Wynn.
Uh-huh.
They have a cafe in there called the Grand Lux. The world's greatest beignets are in the Grand Lux.
Okay, I'm going there, man.
Yeah, be prepared now. We it used to be free parking. Now they charge you $30 to park, and they will not validate at the cafe. I learned that the hard way.
Oh man, I love beignets. I went when I was in New Orleans. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and had like actual beignets. It was so good, so good.
Yeah,
Disneyland has good beignets.
Yeah, the ones in Vegas are better.
Yeah, that's cool.
They're fluffier and they have dipping sauces. And
so maybe we finish this on like how you think Utah and its future in the let's just call it the retail space. In the retail space, what do you think the outlook is for us? Because what we've seen in the tech industry, and you see it in the MLM industry, whether you like it or not, is when there's been success, that community, particularly those who have been successful, kind of reach back and mentor and invest in and kind of help grow the next generation of entrepreneurs. It seems like that's happening in the retail industry in a very big way. And we're really good at that in Utah. So we kind of do it even bigger than most ecosystems do that, right? And, you know, again, you're investing. And so there's like some reasons why you would want to do that too, right? And but where do you think we're at there? It seems like we're at the beginning of something pretty special.
I think there's going to be continued consolidation. There's pressure to consolidate. And by that I mean you get to a certain size, and your investors, if you have investors, want you to do something bigger. And oftentimes it's somebody from the outside coming in, and this is what happened to Climate.
Yeah.
At Teton, I'm 100% owner, so I haven't had to dilute with outside investment. I think that's pretty unique.
You're a unicorn.
I wish I was a unicorn.
That's incredible.
The kind of unicorn that.
Yeah, the kind of unicorn that you have.
Yeah. So, you know,
you're a better unicorn because those unicorns, they all have investors.
They dilute a lot, don't they? Yeah. But they also have hyper growth. And the tech industry is just unique. You know, it's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer. Here's what I know is not going to change. The unbelievable access to the outdoors in Utah is not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it's going to keep getting better. And that just spawns ideas. The more people that are outdoors, the healthier they are, both physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And you get out there and you just start thinking, and your mind opens up, and I could do this, I could do that. That's not going to change. And so sometimes we get people who do that, and they come to us because we're established, and they're like, what about this idea? And so I'm a sponge for ideas.
Mm-hmm. Now,
oftentimes it's outside of our wheelhouse. And I told you earlier, we're a no if it doesn't fit. I've just learned the hard way through life that we're a no unless it fits. But there's a lot of things that fit. And that is going to continue to happen. Whether they bring it to businesses like me to take to market, or whether they decide to be an entrepreneur themselves and take it to market.
Yeah.
Either way is good.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually going to ask you around the investing piece, and you are interesting in that you bootstrapped it and you're 100% owner. How do you invest in these consumer brands? That's an interesting piece, because investing in tech is a pretty standard thing. You're just trying to either go public or sell it.
Yeah.
Those are the two things.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'll do one of those two things or you failed. Like that's kind of like it. Like you got to have an exit at some point.
Yeah.
You're interesting that you never have to have an exit, right? You can just keep doing this and hand it down to generation, like whatever you want to do with it, right? Like that's not how the tech world works. But it seems like investors in retail products invest like their tech companies in the sense where they're trying to get an exit and an exit pretty quick.
Yeah, I've seen that, and oftentimes the exits aren't great because at least the experiences that I've had is you'll get somebody to come in and invest for a certain percentage of the company, soon as that happens, I don't know whether it's because they have board seats now or they now have control. The second bite of the apple that the founder wants to have isn't as good as they thought it was going to be when they took their first bite. The first bite comes in with that investment, and then the second bite doesn't happen. And I don't know if that's the MO of these businesses that are coming in with their investment. like they know that's going to happen, and they get a founder who's trusting, like so many of us are.
Yeah.
But
you really shouldn't raise money for those watching it. Like if you can avoid it, you really should not at all costs, even for tech companies. But I think for your type of companies too.
Yeah. If what matters to you, well, let me restate it this way. The things that matter to me are so important, like overbuilding product and allowing the consumer to have an experience with your gear. That means they're rarely talking about the gear. My mantra is this: if you wake up in the morning having had a good sleep, or let's put it this way, if you wake up in the morning and you're talking about your gear, chances are you didn't have a good sleep.
Yeah.
But if you wake up in the morning and you stoke the campfire and you start talking about the conversations you had last night around the campfire, that gear performed really well. Yeah. And you're not talking about it. Right? So I want that experience to happen over and over and over again. If I get an investor to come in, they might be all about the numbers and not about the experience.
They definitely will be. Yeah.
That's what investment is, right? So I just haven't wanted to water down that experience.
That's smart.
Now, will I always be in this business? Probably not. I mean, I'm getting up there, and I'm also involved in other businesses. Mina Group, Astra Capital is a venture capital fund that we're launching here soon. I'm involved in other things. Could I hire somebody to run Teton? Yeah, I've tried that, and they did, again, 3 of the 4 years they did good, but the 4th year it sucked me back in. I don't want to get sucked back in if I ever do exit. So I'm either not going to exit or I'm going to really exit well.
Yeah,
those are the two options.
Yeah,
but this middle exit is not going to happen.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. How often do you go camping these days?
Not as often as you would think. I'm married to somebody who doesn't like camping.
That's interesting.
She's married to somebody who didn't like camping as a kid at all.
Yeah.
So I don't argue with her a whole lot on camping. I get out with my boys some, especially because they were involved in scouts. The scouting isn't as big in Utah as it used to be a few years ago.
Oh, it used to be huge. It used to be the whole thing.
Yeah, it used to be everything.
Yeah.
So I get outdoors a lot. So if I could change the question, how often do you get outdoors? All the time.
Yeah.
Either on my bike. I love to road bike. It's gotten a little dangerous, so I use the Murdoch Canal Trail a lot. I love to snowshoe. We got a couple kids.
I want to get into snowshoeing. Is it fun?
Oh, it's so fun.
Okay.
It's so fun, and it's so unique because have you ever been into one of those like soundproof booths, and they have either carpeting or they have something on the wall that just deadens the sound?
Yeah.
That's what it's like when you're snowshoeing. It's an unbelievable sound. It's different than hiking because everything is blanketed in this pillow. Now there's so many people doing it nowadays that you don't even need snowshoes if you wait too long because once it gets tamped down by the first 2 or 3 snowshoers, you can just go in boots.
It's become really popular.
Really popular.
Interesting.
But if you go early enough in the morning, like before the sun's up, then you get this fresh. Then you need your snowshoes, and it's a good workout. And just like biking, you take turns in front because the guy in front's doing all the work.
Yeah.
So I love that kind of stuff. Mentally, it's really, really good for me.
Yeah.
I rejuvenate. My wife's like, you need an outdoor experience. It's because I'm probably something's happening mentally, and go get outdoors and fix that mind of yours. So I get outdoors a lot.
That's cool. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Congrats on everything. Appreciate everything you did at Summit as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was cool. That was awesome, man.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Great to meet you.